Inside a packed federal courtroom in Dallas, Texas, the air was thick, almost electric. A hush swept over the room as Judge John Carter struck his gavel, signaling the start of a trial that had the entire political world watching. Striding in with fierce determination was Democratic Congresswoman and former defense attorney Jasmine Crockett. She was no stranger to the fight, whether defending the voiceless in court or going toe-to-toe on Capitol Hill. Today, she represented whistleblower James Carter, a man with the guts to expose Charles Lawson, a billionaire developer accused of siphoning millions in taxpayer funds into his private empire. Armed with damning recordings and financial records, Crockett was ready for battle. She thought this would be open and shut. But then, everything changed. Across the courtroom from behind the defense table emerged a face that sent a ripple through the room. Karoline Leavitt. Yes, that Karoline Leavitt. Former White House press secretary under Donald Trump. Now acting as a special legal advisor. Youthful, polished, and icy in her stare, she wasn't just a spokesperson anymore. She was stepping into the legal arena, backed by power, precision, and something even more dangerous, calculated political ambition. Crockett's eyes narrowed. A mouthpiece from the Trump era? In court? Her jaw clenched. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was personal, and the stakes were higher than anyone realized. Before we dive into the moment Leavitt flips the courtroom upside down, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? You won't want to miss what happens next. Let's get started with the courthouse on Preston Street in Houston shimmered under the Texas sun like a stage waiting for the curtain to rise. Outside, a sea of cameras and microphones swarmed the courthouse steps. Inside, the federal courtroom was already full. Reporters, political operatives, high-ranking donors, retired military veterans, even a few pastors who had driven in from nearby counties. This wasn't just a case, it was a spectacle. At 9 a.m. sharp, the doors opened, and in walked Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She didn't glide in, she stormed in, like a woman on a mission. Her red heels clicked with precision, her tailored suit as bold as her expression. Flanked by two aides and a legal assistant, she moved like someone who had already rehearsed her victory speech. The courtroom paused just for a second to look. Because when Crockett entered, she wanted the room to know. She expected to win. Her eyes darted toward the defense table where Charles Langston, a wealthy, aging conservative donor, sat with an unreadable expression. He looked more like a CEO than a villain, his silver cufflinks catching the morning light. His calm made her twitch. "We've got him," Crockett whispered to her aide as she approached the plaintiff's table. "Dead to rights." She believed it. Why wouldn't she? Audio evidence, wire transfers, signed contracts. She had built this case like a tower, and now she was ready to stand on it and plant her flag. As the judge entered, Honorable Elias Graham, a gray-haired, no-nonsense federal magistrate known for his strict courtroom demeanor, the chatter died instantly. "This court is now in session. Case of the people of Texas versus Charles Langston," he intoned, gavel thudding like thunder. Crockett rose, chin lifted, voice full of force. "Your Honor, the state presents evidence of embezzlement, wire fraud, and misuse of public funds. Charles Langston, while posing as a civic benefactor, redirected taxpayer dollars to fund private luxury developments, lining his pockets while communities suffered." As she spoke, she didn't just look at the judge. She looked at the audience, at the reporters, at the older veterans in the third row, at every eye in the room. "We have recordings, we have contracts, we have the truth." She placed a USB drive and a thick folder of financial records on the evidence table. The crowd murmured. Some nodded. A couple of older gentlemen in VFW jackets whispered to each other. Crockett had them. The performance was perfect. But then, a pause, a shift. From the defense table, a woman stood, not the lead attorney, not the old man in glasses scribbling notes. She was younger, smaller in frame, wearing a modest black suit and no jewelry. Her hair was pulled tightly back. Her heels were quiet. Her presence wasn't. Karoline Leavitt. The press noticed first. "Is that?" someone whispered from the second row. "That's Trump's press secretary," another voice murmured. Crockett caught sight of her and blinked. She didn't recognize her at first, not in this setting. Then it hit her. The press photos, the sound bites, the voice from the White House podium. "What's Trump's little mouthpiece doing here?" she muttered, not quietly. The whisper traveled. Karoline said nothing. She merely laid a thin folder down in front of her. "Saturday." Then slowly folded her hands. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes locked on Crockett like a sniper sighting her mark. The judge looked over, his brow furrowed. "Is the defense prepared to make its opening?" Before the lead attorney could stand, Karoline did. "Your Honor," she said softly, "I'm here as a special legal consultant appointed by the Office of Legal Counsel at the request of the administration." Crockett raised her eyebrows, a short, scoffing laugh escaping her lips. "What is this? Reality TV? You're not even a lawyer. You're a press girl with a podium." Karoline didn't react, but the court felt it, the mood changing, composure versus confidence, and it was about to be tested. Crockett was mid-sentence, riding the wave of her opening argument. Her voice rose with passion as she gestured to the evidence laid neatly on the table. "This recording," she said, holding up the USB, "was obtained by whistleblower Marie Jenkins, Langston's former financial officer. On this file, Langston admits to funneling funds, in his own voice." The courtroom buzzed. Judge Graham nodded slightly, taking notes. "And here," she continued, raising a set of papers, "are the bank statements. These show wire transfers from public accounts to shell corporations, matching dates, dollar amounts, and project codes. It's irrefutable." She turned, eyes blazing. "This isn't speculation. It's fact." The moment hung in the air. Even the skeptics in the room seemed stunned. The narrative was powerful. Crockett's energy filled the chamber. Until, "Your Honor," came a calm, quiet voice from the defense table. The court turned. Karoline Leavitt had stood up. No flair, no volume, just gravity. "Before this evidence is considered," she said, "I request to address its legality." Crockett whipped around. "Excuse me?" she barked. "You're not even licensed to be here." "Appointed by the administration," Karoline replied. "I've been granted permission to present under special counsel privilege, per Title 28 CFR. The judge raised his hand. "Miss Leavitt, proceed." Karoline walked forward with only one sheet of paper. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't grandstand. "Texas," she began, "is a two-party consent state. Any recording must have consent from both participants to be legally admissible." She turned to the judge, then to the crowd. "This recording was made without Mr. Langston's consent. No court order authorized it. That makes it inadmissible under both Texas Penal Code Section 16.02 and federal standards, especially following the precedent of United States v. Nixon, 1974. The room fell completely silent. Crockett blinked. "You're twisting whistleblower law," she said, voice cracking with sudden uncertainty. "This recording is protected." Karoline tilted her head. "Whistleblower protection prevents retaliation against an informant," she replied. "It does not permit illegal evidence collection." Crockett opened her mouth, closed it, looked to her team. They had nothing. Karoline pressed forward. "Without a court order, this evidence is fruit of the poisonous tree and inadmissible in court." The judge sat back, arms crossed, his face unreadable. In the second row, a retired Marine colonel turned to his wife and whispered, "She's not a lawyer?" His wife shook her head slowly. She doesn't need to be. Reporters scribbled furiously. One editor leaned toward his assistant. Get that clip ready. That line's going viral. Back at the plaintiff's table, Crockett's fingers trembled slightly as she picked up the USB drive again. It had felt like a sword a moment ago. Now it felt like dead weight. Karoline turned to walk back, and as she passed Crockett, she didn't smirk, she didn't glance, she didn't gloat. She just said, barely above a whisper, "You brought passion. I brought the law." When court reconvened after the 15-minute recess, something had shifted. The press filed back in slowly, but their whispers were sharp. Veterans from the third row leaned forward. The courtroom air was hot and unusually still, like everyone was waiting for the next explosion. Jasmine Crockett returned to her seat with a noticeable stiffness in her walk. Gone was the swagger, replaced by a forced calm masking simmering rage. Her aides whispered strategies into her ear. She waved them off. Across the aisle, Karoline Leavitt sat like a statue, unbothered. A legal assistant handed her a folder. She didn't even look at it. Her eyes were locked forward. Her presence alone was a silent rebuke. Judge Graham entered, nodding to the room. "Ms. Crockett," he said with a slow drawl, "you may continue." Crockett didn't hesitate. She stood and strode to the center of the courtroom, holding up a thick folder like it was a sword in a duel. "Your Honor," she began, her voice just a touch too loud. "This is Exhibit C, a series of financial contracts showing money flowing from state development grants directly into offshore accounts linked to Mr. Langston's construction empire." She slapped the folder down onto the evidence table with dramatic flair. A few members of the audience jumped. Signed, sealed, dated, not speculation. Proof for a moment, silence. She looked to the crowd, desperately now, for the nods and affirmations that had come so easily earlier in the day. But the faces weren't as supportive. Now many looked guarded, skeptical. Karoline stood slowly. "Your Honor," she said simply. Judge Graham nodded. "Proceed." Karoline took 3 small steps forward. Her heels barely clicked on the marble floor. Her voice remained calm, but every syllable sliced like a scalpel. "Ms. Crockett's documents, Exhibit C, were obtained via subpoena. However, the subpoena was issued by a court clerk, not a judge." The room rippled. "Under Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 45, Karoline continued, such subpoenas are invalid in a federal corruption case. Only a judge can authorize this level of financial intrusion." Crockett paled. She spun toward the judge. "That's ridiculous," she shouted. "That's a procedural technicality." Karoline's voice didn't change. "It's the law." Crockett stepped forward, jabbing a finger into the air. "You're just here to protect the rich." Karoline blinked once, then replied, "I'm here to protect the law." Her words fell with the weight of a gavel. The judge glanced at the clerk. He was already flipping through the case file. "Is this true, Ms. Crockett?" Judge Graham asked, his voice losing its warmth. Crockett looked down at her documents, then at her team. Silence. "The clerk signed it," she admitted, voice thin. "But it was under time-sensitive circumstances. The law should prioritize truth over red tape." Karoline stepped forward again. "The law isn't red tape, Ms. Crockett. It's a contract with the people." The room went still. And then, just audible, a veteran in the second row whispered, "God bless her." Crockett's eyes widened. "Who trained you?" she hissed, unable to contain herself. "You're not even a lawyer." Karoline's eyes were calm, like a lake in winter. "No," she said, "but I've read every law you ignored." The audience gasped. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. From the back of the room, a reporter whispered into their mic, "And there it is, folks. Leavitt just turned the courtroom on its head." Crockett slammed her palm against the plaintiff's table, rattling the microphones. "This is insane. You're letting a spokeswoman destroy a federal trial. But it wasn't insane. It was happening. And as Crockett's composure unraveled, Karoline's grip on the room only grew tighter. Crockett paced. Her heels struck the floor like hammers. She wasn't speaking anymore. She was shouting. This is a political hit job. This is Trump's people protecting their own. She's not here for justice. She's here for cover, and we're letting it happen on national television, the crowd murmured. Security guards exchanged glances and slowly stepped closer to the courtroom walls, just in case the heat escalated further. Karoline didn't move. She waited, and when Crockett stopped, her chest heaving, her anger red-hot, Karoline walked forward with the calm of someone who had already won. She handed a single sheet of paper to the court clerk. No stack, no folder, just one page. Then she turned to the judge. "Your Honor," she began, "this is an affidavit from a certified independent auditor, Michael Hargrove. He has no political affiliation, no ties to the Trump administration, no financial connection to Mr. Langston." She paused, then finished. "In this sworn statement, Mr. Hargrove confirms that the contracts in question were cleared in a routine audit 4 months ago. The transactions match a legitimate grant allocation system approved by the state's Infrastructure Council." Crockett froze. She took one step back. "That's not possible," she whispered. Karoline looked her in the eye. "This document was public record. You just never asked for it." The silence that followed was deafening. One elderly man removed his hat. Another woman clutched her rosary. Reporters were frozen, mid-sentence. Cameramen panned across the courtroom like they were filming a documentary. Crockett's knees bent slightly, as if her body had betrayed her strength. "You forged that," she said, voice cracked and desperate. This isn't real. This isn't—" "It's notarized," Karoline replied. "I suggest your team check the state registrar." Crockett turned to her legal assistant, who fumbled with a laptop. His fingers trembled as he typed. A long pause. Then he looked up, nodded, silent. Crockett's mouth opened, but no words came. The judge leaned back. The court was completely, utterly still. "I need a moment," Judge Graham said, and banged the gavel once. "Recess for 30 minutes. But the courtroom didn't move, because what they had just witnessed wasn't legal argument. It was a legal takedown. Crockett sank into her chair. Karoline returned to the defense table, her posture perfect. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. But her silence said everything. Back row, a retired state senator whispered, "She's got the steel of Margaret Thatcher and the logic of Scalia." Next to him, a veteran nodded solemnly. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. The moment the gavel fell, the courtroom buzzed with a quiet unlike any that had come before. Reporters sat frozen. The judge had recessed, but no one rose. Not yet. At the plaintiff's table, Jasmine Crockett sat motionless, her hands gripped tightly around a paper she no longer believed in. Her legal assistant hovered nearby, unsure whether to speak. Across the room, Karoline Leavitt rose, not in celebration, not in gloating, but with the quiet dignity of someone who had defended something sacred and won. She gathered her notes with silent precision. Her eyes didn't wander. She didn't look at the cameras now aiming directly at her. She simply walked out, like someone who'd done their duty and had no need to announce it. And that was what hit America the hardest. That night, a digital explosion has coming. By evening, Karoline's closing words, "You just never asked for it," had been clipped, captioned, and shared across every platform imaginable. Within 2 hours, 17 million views on X, 8 million on TikTok, CNN, Fox News, and Newsmax all led with it. By morning, the hashtags were trending globally. Shock Leavitt Legal Masterclass, Shocker Calm Wins, Shock Texas Trial Truth. The internet was flooded not just with political takes, but with something deeper: emotion. Older Americans, many of whom felt dismissed, mocked, or tired of being called outdated, saw in Karoline a kind of return to the dignity of discourse they remembered. A viral comment on Facebook from a retired teacher read, "I've taught debate for 35 years. That was the finest example of calm logic I've seen in decades." Another from a Gold Star father in Indiana said simply, "She didn't flinch. She didn't rage. She defended the law with grace. That's what my son died for." On MSNBC, the mood was scrambled. One panelist tried to spin the outcome as political theater gone wrong. On Fox, Sean Hannity declared, "That wasn't a press secretary. That was a stateswoman." On The View, there was uncomfortable laughter as co-hosts avoided talking about the legal precision of Leavitt's dismantling. But the audience knew, because the clip didn't need commentary, it was the commentary. And how about in living rooms across America? In a small living room in Peoria, Illinois, 76-year-old Army vet Carl Madison watched the trial highlights 3 times in a row. His wife of 53 years turned to him after the final replay and asked, "What are you thinking, hon?" Carl wiped his eyes. "That girl didn't just win a trial," he whispered. "She brought honor back into a room that's forgotten what it looked like." In New Hampshire, local reporters caught up with Karoline outside a town hall just 3 days after the trial. Wearing a navy coat and no makeup, she addressed the buzzing questions with characteristic poise. "I wasn't there to humiliate anyone," she said. "I was there because I believe in the law. I believe in truth. I believe the American people deserve clarity without the shouting, without the politics. I work for them, not for applause." And with that, she walked away. As Congresswoman Crockett returned to Washington, her tone was different. Gone were the fiery sound bites. Gone was the daily indignation. Her team had advised her to let the storm pass, but she knew better. The damage was done. She had underestimated a woman who wasn't looking for a podium, but a purpose. Karoline didn't win with clever retorts. She didn't need theatrics. She won because truth, delivered with calm confidence, still wins in America. In a courtroom built on truth and tension, one woman didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. Do you think Karoline Leavitt proved that knowledge is more powerful than power itself? Comment below if you believe that calm courage still matters in America. And if you're tired of courtroom circuses and political shouting, subscribe now, because the more they try to silence the calm voice of truth, the more we will raise it.